Hey, what's up, guys? We have Shane Peterson here. He is an air traffic controller. So how you doing today, Shane?
I'm doing great, Micah. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll go from there?
So basically, I have a large background in aviation. I was a pilot for a little bit, commercial pilot, and then eventually became an air traffic controller. And I've done that for about 25 years. And now I teach air traffic controllers at the essentially the world's busiest airport.
Which is which one? I
So
want to say
currently,
O'Hare, right?
yeah. It depends on how you measure it on a at a given time. It is O'Hare currently. And it's because of the amount of aircraft. So you can also measure the amount of people that are on the airplanes, and Atlanta usually is in first place as a result of that. But as far as the things that matter to an air traffic controller would be how many airplanes are moving around in the airspace. So it's definitely the busiest for that.
Okay, so Atlanta actually has the most people, but then O'Hare has the most actual planes in the sky.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. And why
Yeah.
is that? I've always heard that my family's from O'Hare or Chicago, and
Okay.
that's where O'Hare is, right? Chicago.
Yep.
And I've always heard that that's like the busiest airport. Why is that? And then also Atlanta, the two busiest places.
Well, well, I'd say O'Hare is busy simply because of its central location in the country, and a lot of the airlines do a hub and a spoke system out of it in order to connect to other areas. As far as Atlanta goes, they get more international travel into there because they're closer to the coast. The airplanes tend to be larger, and so there's more people on them.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I think I don't even really. It's been so long since I've thought about this, but it seems like I think I always kind of thought, why isn't New York the busiest? You know what I mean? But obviously, it makes sense that Chicago is this more central. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. New York is obviously very busy. They work a lot of airplanes there. It's probably a more complex type of airspace where, everything's cut into little pie pieces. And so for a controller, it may be more difficult just because of that, as opposed to the amount of volume that controller is required to handle.
Yeah. And then, are you from Chicago?
Yes. Yeah. I am from Chicago. I still reside there and I still teach here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
city, if you don't mind me asking? Because I kind of know the area. My
Yeah.
family's from Naperville, that area.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Naperville,
Yeah. Yeah.
Eaton, Warrenville is where my grandpa. I don't know if you know Warrenville. That's where my
Yes.
grandpa lived. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I live out in the western suburbs in the Fox Valley. So Naperville, you're talking northwest of that by I'm probably about 30 minutes, 45 minutes northwest of Naperville. So,
Okay.
and that's where the radar facility that I work at is pretty much over in that area. So,
Okay. So you're not even actually out of the actual airport.
no,
You're close
no.
to home.
We
Okay.
are we are in what looks like a warehouse in the middle of a light industrial area. So most
That's
people don't
probably
even know we're there.
that's probably kind of nice, right? That you don't actually have to go into O'Hare every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect because you can a controller out here, they could live out in the farmland, which they're right next to, or they could live in Chicago if they want. Some of them choose to do that and commute outward, and a lot of us just, live near the actual facility. So
There's obviously some of them actually work at that what you see on the landing strip or whatever, like the
yeah, the control tower.
yeah, obviously
Yeah, yeah,
some people are actually working there and then
yeah,
some aren't.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And then you said you were a pilot first and then transitioned to air traffic controller. So
yeah.
what would you say why did you transition and then what would you say the main I guess yeah, differences between those two?
Okay. Well, I need to backtrack a little bit. I was an air traffic controller in the military for 4 years before I did any piloting. So I got out of the military. I was done with that. And eventually I ended up going to doing flight training. And the only reason I really stopped that was because 9/11 happened. And so I was in the middle of being a flight instructor at that time. 9/11 happened and it just, as far as aviation goes, the economy was destroyed for a little while. The FAA called and said, "Hey, do you want to be an air traffic controller again?" I said, "Yes, thank you for rescuing me from waiting to get any type of flying job that was worth anything."
So they still had um the air traffic control jobs, but not necessarily like the flying jobs, like the pilot jobs.
Yeah, there was just everybody was getting furloughed from the airlines. There was not any hiring for a little while at that time.
But it seems weird that there was still the air traffic control. There was more of those but not the pilot. You know what I mean? You would think that both would be kind of like downgraded.
Um, there is some connection there. The thing is the before I say what I'm going to say, let me just be clear that my opinions are that of my own and have nothing to do with the opinions of the FAA or the National Air Traffic Controllers Association or even SAIC, which provides some of the training at the facilities. With that said, the FAA has always had a lot of staffing issues. So even as 9/11 happens, and maybe there is a decrease in volume in air traffic for a little while, they were still behind the power curve as how many controllers were needed at that time. So there's always a long training process, and it's a very long training process depending on what type of facility you go to in the FAA.
Okay. So you never really got around to like actually flying the planes then, or did you?
I was just doing flight instruction
Okay.
at that time. At that time, yeah.
Okay. So one question I just thought of like beforehand for me kind of personally is I fly drones, and I've kind of been in a good amount of situations where I'm like, I don't really know if I'm supposed to be doing this. And like I'll be up there and I have a DJ. I don't know if you know about drones at all, but I have a DJI Air 2S and drone. I used to have a Mini, now I have an Air 2S, and I fly it pretty much wherever it allows me. But sometimes I'll be in the air and it'll say like, before I didn't even do this, but now it'll say like manned aircraft, flying towards you or whatever. And I'm like, this just doesn't seem safe to me. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to be safe, and um,
So what tells you that an aircraft is getting close to your drone?
so my controller, and normally obviously it's like a helicopter. Like I'm not that high, and there's a certain level of how high you can go, which is like I think it's 495,
400.
40, something around there for
Yeah.
mine. Um, and then yeah, my controller that I'm looking at, I'm using my controller will say like kind of beep and say manned aircraft approaching. And so I've literally it's like there's a helicopter in the sky. I'm like, I don't really know how close this thing is to me or anything. I mean, what are the rules in terms of, you know what I mean? Like how
Yeah.
screwed I guess I could be if I'm doing the wrong thing. I know if I'm flying in where there is an airport, like I can't do that. I won't do that. It won't even allow me. But like just let's just say I'm flying somewhere else, and there's an aircraft approaching me, and it hits or even it doesn't. What are the rules and regulations on that kind of
Okay. So
thing?
the way that works as far as air traffic controllers go is we don't get involved with that. So anytime there's a report of a drone being out of position, for instance, we just pass that on to the FSDO, the flight standards, and they do what they do with it. So we don't get involved with it. I don't know why we don't, but that was just never part of what we did.
Okay, I mean, do you know the rules? Would you know the rules and regulations in terms of no, you
Nope.
don't even know at all.
No, just shouldn't be in the it should not be in the air traffic area. We know that. Basically, there's certain flight paths we know they're not supposed to be in, but beyond that, we don't, a lot of times we don't even know it's anything's happening with the drones. With that said, if someone worked at a control tower, uh, they might be a little more privy as to what an operation might be going on near their control tower, near their airspace, because that probably would be passed on to them for their knowledge. But where we work in radar, we're just we're just never involved with it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm never flying actually near the airport. Like the other day, I was flying like West Hollywood, and there's a helicopter nearby, and and there are times when I lose control of the drone, and because it'll like lose reception, and then it'll just come back. And in those situations, I'm kind of like, I can't see the drone. The drone is just coming back to me, so I'm like, it seems like I'm definitely for I like flying drones. I'm for flying drones, but I've been in some situations where I'm like, I don't really feel comfortable with this situation. So usually I will just either land the drone or go as low as possible. But there are situations where it can just, I don't know, it seems kind of weird to me, you know what I mean? Where it's like I'm kind of
Yeah,
surprised I'm even able to be up here with, and there's a
yeah,
helicopter up here.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to ask about was, I don't know if you saw like the Nathan Fielder, the rehearsal
You
thing.
did.
I
Yeah.
when I watched it, I was kind of like, I would imagine this would probably be pissing off a lot of pilots and airline people in general. Like, do you feel like that was the case, or how did you guys view his whole thing?
It didn't make me angry in any way whatsoever. If I recall, most of it had to do with him having an issue with communication pilot to pilot as to how they should handle situations, whether they should speak up or not speak up. And that's more of a crew issue, and the training they have for the cockpit. I don't remember exactly anything they said about air traffic control per se in there. So
No, I just
yeah,
more like wondered like the air. I don't know if how much you guys kind of connect with the the pilots and everybody else, but if some of the pilots were kind of like, because I know I would imagine if you went in, if you did this with like with cops or something, I would imagine that cops would get pissed off and be like, hey man, like you're kind of like like obviously he was trolling with what he was doing, but I could see people getting pissed off. So I don't know if
yeah,
pilots were kind of like, hey man, kind of like stay in your own lane type thing. You know what I
maybe,
mean? Yeah.
maybe. I don't know how, who's to say how anybody reacted. I personally, I had when I watch things like that, I get kind of lost in my own head because it's comedy, right? But it's also a documentary, so I'm kind of going, what's his? It took me. I was several episodes in before I even understood the angle of where we're going with this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's very weird. Yeah, exactly. It's very weird comedy because it's kind of like it becomes so realistic that you're almost like, is this even, it's like a weird, I
Yeah.
mean, you almost feel kind of weird about it because you're like, is this even comedy anymore? Like, what is this?
Right, right, right,
Yeah. I don't know if you
right.
had seen his previous stuff, his last season,
Yeah,
or yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if you could just, those were like the main two questions that I had. But in general with the air traffic controlling, if you could just kind of go into your day to day, and then like I said, I imagine it's a stressful job. So how stressful
Mm,
it gets, how many hours you're working, that
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah. Do you want me to first talk about maybe how it's all broken down as far as what different facilities do and so how all that kind of comes together?
Yeah, whatever you wanna, yeah, whatever you
Okay.
want to go over, yeah.
Uh, Okay, all right. So basically there's three types of air traffic controllers. So you mentioned it, the at the airport you have the control towers, right? So control tower controllers, right? So they handle everything that is local at the airport within up to, let's say, 5 miles from the airport, a few thousand feet above it. So their main responsibility is making sure that nothing bad happens on the runway or on the taxiways. So they're avoiding any type of collision on those spots. So they're clearing the aircraft for takeoff, clearing the land, and they take the aircraft to and from parking. They give them their clearances, tell, they so the pilots know what their route is before they depart, that kind of thing. So that's basically those controllers. Then you have centers, which they're air route traffic control centers. And their job is to work airplanes that are en route. So the high altitude, long distance. A lot of the centers cover multiple states. So they're a building that just has very long range radar all over the place. And it's a little bit more of a slower pace type of air traffic control. You've got planes hundreds of miles apart and the controller's already maybe doing something to alleviate a future problem between those aircraft. Turn 5 degrees left, something like that. I've never worked in a center, but I have worked with lots of people that have, and that's pretty much how they recounted the situation to me. And then you have where I have worked most of my career, which is it's called a TRACON, Terminal Radar Approach Control Facility. And so what a TRACON is the go between what we talked about, the tower and the airport's airspace, all the way out, say 40 miles in all directions, up to maybe 15,000 feet, 23,000 feet, depending on the facility. And so you have the center on the outside of that, the TRACON is sort of in the middle, and then the tower at the very end, the actual airport. So where we work, we essentially our job is to get the airplanes in and out of the local area. So in Chicago's situation, we work any airplane that comes in or out of O'Hare, any airplane that comes out of Midway. You have a lot of other little airports around the area, DuPage, Executive Airport, Gary Airport. And so any airplanes in and out of those. So when you add all that up, it becomes a very saturated and busy location to work at. And I think you were asking, I'm sorry, what was the question originally?
Oh, the original question was just, what do you do on the day? I mean, I guess just like in general, what is it exactly, air traffic controlling? And then
Okay,
what do you do on the day to day? How stressful is it? How many hours do you
okay,
work in? Stuff like that.
okay. So to answer this question, first of all, it depends on where the air traffic controller works. So there are some places that are extremely slow. I mean, we're talking, there's debates as to who's going to get to wash their car next. I mean, it's just, virtually doing nothing. And then all the way up to a place like O'Hare where it's busy most of the time. And so in the busier facilities, the controllers are a lot of them are very, very stressed out a lot of times. There's not a lot of breaks. A lot of times they can't get vacation. They can't take time off. A lot of controllers are working 6 days a week. Some of them are working up to 10 hours a day on those 6 days. And there's really no way out of it. I mean, other than calling in sick or something, there's just not the vacation, you only have so much you get per year, right? And even that, you have to request it the prior year. So, and that's somewhere maybe October-ish for each facility. So you're in October, you're going, wow, next year in August, I'd like to maybe take a week off. And so you got to plan way out there. So it becomes really difficult for them to have a life outside of the job very easily, especially with people who have normal shifts, because an air traffic controller is working days and nights and sometimes spending the night over at the facility. You have some shifts that are very brutal on your sleeping ability. You may work, let's say, at a night, so 2 p.m. in the afternoon until 10 at night, and then you have to be back the next morning, let's say at 7 in the morning, and you work till 3 in the afternoon, and then you got to be back that night at 10 p.m. and work from 10 p.m. until maybe 6 in the morning. And so it's the bodies, people's bodies are just freaking out, not being able to get enough rest properly.
And well, for one, I mean, I would imagine that type, because I hear that with doctors too, especially during their training, where like they're working so many hours that like the sleep, messes with you. It almost would seem like that would be factored, or say even with like semi truck drivers or something, like you would almost think that would be factored in, so like people aren't tired on the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, you would need more. If you had more air traffic controllers, you could make it so that people had consistent work schedules. Maybe everybody, you have a lot more people, so they all work during the day, and then you have a whole bunch of people come in at night, and a whole bunch of people that work overnight. Obviously, less people because there's less airplanes in the middle of the night, but something where they could get used to the schedule. I know that there's some experimentation going on. There are some controllers that are getting that here locally, where they get a consistent schedule at least for a week on an end, maybe 2 weeks, kind of a thing. Then that gets changed to something else after that.
And these hours are true for you too, because you were saying they, but this is true for you too,
Not
right?
not for me at this point because I'm only teaching the air traffic controllers that want to become a controller here, right? And so that's always done during the day. It could be
Okay.
done at night, but we just don't have enough. Well, we don't have enough instructors to even do that. I'm the only full-time one at this time that teaches.
And you're doing that there. Like this isn't like a private thing you're doing, right? You're
No,
doing it with, and is this,
it's
are
there.
these government jobs or no?
I work for a government contractor that the FAA contracts out to for that. Theoretically, the FAA could do the training themselves, but they don't have enough. They don't have enough controllers to do it,
But the
unfortunately.
actual people, the actual air traffic controllers, they're working directly for the government. It's basically a government job in general, right?
The controllers themselves, yes, they work
Yeah.
for the FAA. Yes. There's also some controllers that are contract controllers, but they generally work at the slower control tower, the ones that are kind of not in the middle of nowhere sort of a thing.
Okay. And then the whole air is the whole airport like kind of like a government owned company, or is that private?
I think it depends on the airport, but I can tell you in Chicago, it's owned by the city of Chicago.
Okay.
They, in fact, the city of Chicago essentially extended their city out uh, just to incorporate O'Hare because originally it didn't go out that far. So yeah, Chicago's actually they own the airport and they're responsible for a lot of the things that go on in it, um, from maintenance to well, I don't know all the things they do there, but they own it.
And I would imagine that that would be better that it's I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, but do you feel like it's better going like that you work for the government, or would you prefer it to be like a private entity, do you think?
Well, that's a tough question. I think that it's good for to be government in that I don't think there should be a profit at the end of the day. And really, I mean, you can't have competition. It's not like you can take off in an airplane and choose to, well, now I'm going to have this company be the one who is my air traffic control. It's just that would be impossible. So at the end of the day, the only thing that you could do is have a private corporation, or you could have a government contractor replace the FAA. But at the end of the day, the U.S. government is still going to have to pay for that. There could be maybe some more fees added to the pilots, but they're already paying landing fees at airports to go, to land at them. So I don't know. I know that one positive thing that could happen out of privatization, maybe you could update the equipment a little bit better, but it's hard to say. I know that Canada privatized back in the 90s, and as far as I know, they're doing well, but they also don't run the same amount of airplanes. There's more airplanes running around the United States than really any other country. So for the United States, for the FAA to switch to, maybe let's say you made it a private company, you'd have to be very careful for that switchover, right? Because currently it works. We keep the airplanes from running into each other and they're safe. So you start switching in new pieces of equipment. How does that switch get thrown? I can tell you from experience, just making tiny little changes to equipment at our facility in the middle of the night that goes live, and then by 7 in the morning, you have air traffic controllers going, this doesn't work right. Get it out of here. We got to roll it back, right? So it could be just a little programming change that could be a problem, and it could be a safety problem. So as a result, you've got to be very careful how you would make any type of switch over for something like that.
Yeah. So I've heard that it's one of the most stressful jobs. Would you say that's just about true? It's
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Without a doubt. Like I said, it depends on if you're at a busy facility, yes. If you're at a facility that's not busy, sometimes you're stressed, I'd imagine. But I mean, each person's different too, how they handle stress and what's stressful to them might, and maybe there might be people working as Chicago controller right now that are not under any stress. Maybe.
yeah. So yeah, um yeah, so let's see. So how high like so what's the most stressful part of the job?
At a busy facility, the stressful part is just the sheer number of aircraft at a given moment. They tend to kind of come in these large spurts where there's too many of them a lot of times. We call it getting over delivered. So, you can look on a piece of paper and say, okay, for this hour, we're going to allow 82 aircraft to come in on average per hour for two runways, just say, for example. And that's a pretty standard number at a lot of airports. Problem is, you may be saying you only have two runways and you want 82 airplanes. Well, maybe over that hour you get 82, but you get 65 in 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So you may have this, everything's fine on this end, everything's fine on this end, but in the middle of it, everybody's going, they're stressing out of their minds trying to get everything under control and get all the planes down properly.
Yeah. So at this point, would you say that there's a good amount of like AI being kind of like how most of the pilots is? I don't know if it's AI that's flying the plane, but like now I've heard that like the pilots aren't even really actually doing much, right? Because it's all autopilot. Is this true for the air traffic controller? Do you feel like it's going that way where it's going to get to the point where it's like everything's kind of just mapped out? All you have to do is kind of like make sure everything's going correct, or at this point is it still really just heavily reliant on the actual humans working there?
Yeah, it's still very hands-on. I know that there's some testings going on with different pieces of technology, some AI type stuff, other, computer-based, not AI, but still computer-based of trying to automate this or that. So they're always trying things. Overall, the system is it's so large and it's also very almost segmented if you think about it, because there's so many different airports across the country that some have this type of equipment, some have this type of equipment. So getting it from being so hands-on and old school, you might say, to where a computer is handling most stuff, it's going to take quite a long time. Um, and like I said, it's hard to switch over to that type of thing without having any type of safety issues. I know that I could say RNAV, which is GPS for the aircraft, that's become much more integrated in the system over the last 20 years, where essentially the aircraft can be on routes in and out of airports that where they're essentially just following these RNAV routes, and then a controller really is there to make sure nothing bad happens as they fly along these routes. Maybe the controller's controlling your speed to make sure they get there faster or slower, but for the most part, they can do a lot of that stuff on their own. The problem that that you run into with these systems that are set up and automated is when you have a weather situation, right? Or an emergency. So you may have, you can put planes on a little route, and they're just happy flying along there. But as soon as you put a thunderstorm between them and wherever they're going, that's done for. Like you're not flying these routes anymore. They don't work. And so you're right back to manually moving these airplanes around.
Yeah. And I would imagine you probably get a lot of those in O'Hare too, right? A lot of
Yeah.
those thunderstorms and snowstorms and all that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would say I did work in Salt Lake a long time ago, and that one I thought was a little bit. I felt the weather was stranger there than Chicago, at least as far as aviation goes. Um, they would get they would get thunder snow, so essentially a thunderstorm, but it's snowing, and with all the mountains, it was just lots of turbulence that the pilots of the airplanes would experience. There was one time I remember that uh, the pilot, it was such a bad storm. The pilots couldn't see anything, they're in in the snow and what have you. And they started complaining that you've heard of the Great Salt Lake that's near Salt Lake City, right?
Yeah.
Somehow the salt was getting lifted off of the lake and
Oh man.
up 10,000 feet, well, let's say not that high, let's say 6,000 feet, and getting on the windscreens of the aircraft, and the pilots were not even able to clear their screens because they're saying that it's getting covered in salt along with the snow and it was just crazy.
So the main thing is like when they're coming back and like they're coming back, they want to land, but you can't really land because like it's the snowstorm so bad. So they kind of have to like you guys have to kind of like control them to fly around the airport until things kind of settle down. So you might have a
Yep.
bunch of planes just kind of like doing loops around until they can
Yep.
come down, right?
Yes. Yep.
And
Yep.
so are you guys like constantly in contact with the pilot? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So you're like, and like each one of you might be talking to like a different pilot. Like you might be like, okay, you got to do this. Someone else is talking to another pilot, and you got to be all in sync with these planes.
For holding them for weather, yeah, they're just there's essentially holding patterns they can be put into where they kind of look like a racetrack, right? And it might be a big racetrack. It could be, you know, 10 miles long, or maybe it's only 4 miles long. But essentially, it's just circles that they run. And then when they're ready to either the weather gets better and they can land, then we'll take them out of that, or perhaps they say, you know what? We're running out of fuel. It's time to leave. And so then they're on their way to another airport. They all have to have essentially a secondary airport as their default that they go to if they're starting to run low on time.
So they'll go to like one of the smaller ones around Chicago then at that point.
It's generally going to be a little further out. I forget what the rule is for the pilot as far as how far away it has to be from the primary destination, but it can't be just, you can't pick an airport that's 10 miles away. It's not far enough because if the weather is impacting the airport you want to go to, it's probably impacting the one that's 10 miles away, right? So it has to be further out. I know that Chicago, a lot of times they'll go up to Milwaukee. So I don't know, flying miles to Milwaukee is probably say 60 miles. So somehow that fits the rule for how far it can be.
But even that kind of seems like you were saying they're running out of fuel. It almost seems kind of like it could get kind of like sketchy if they're running out of fuel, but then they got to fly another 60 miles to another airport, and then you know what I mean. What happens if
Yeah.
they get there and then it's the same situation? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, they're not going to usually what they're going to do is they're going to go to a place that they know it has better weather. So they'll be on the radio with their dispatcher who will be telling them, okay, your primary divert is Milwaukee. The weather there right now is it's better, whatever. And so if it's better, they'll go there. But they might say, you know what, it's gotten bad there too, or they expect it to get bad. So maybe they'll divert to another airport that has better weather. If they were to pick a divert airport and they get there and somehow that's gotten bad, you could end up in an emergency situation where the fuel gets too low.
Yeah, I mean this. I mean, even just talking about this, it sounds it sounds stressful. Like I definitely would not be able to do this type of thing. Like I could just, I know that I couldn't do it. Have you had any crazy situations? Like what's the craziest situations you've had like this where the snowstorms and yeah.
Crazy weather situations,
Well, you
like I
mentioned the Salt
said,
Lake City one, but yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's probably the strangest, craziest stuff. I know that, I mean, one of the issues we have at O'Hare and probably anywhere that they have snow is being able to clear the runways in time. So you'll have plowing all the time during the day. And so what'll happen at a place like O'Hare, you could have a whole bunch of airplanes on final, and all of a sudden an airplane lands, and as they're rolling out on that runway, they will be asked, "How's the braking?" And so they'll report it back to the controller as good, or they might say poor, or they might say nil. And so if they say poor, you're probably one aircraft away from losing that runway. If they say nil, then the runway is immediately closed. So you could have 20 planes on final for that all set up to go to that runway, and now they don't have a runway because it's closed. And they got to get the plows out there and they got to plow the snow, which could take 10 minutes. So those planes all go around and now they're in the airspace. You have to control how many keep coming into the airspace, because now once that happens, you've got to stop the ones that are being delivered from the center, and then the center, then they start getting backed up to wherever, and they have to start putting airplanes in the hold for that situation. And so that can happen in a bad snow event. That could happen nonstop, where boom, lost another runway, lost the runway, and you can lose runways for other things too, like let's say an aircraft hits a bird over the runway, that runway's closed. You don't have that, or you don't have it anymore, because they got to get a car out there to drive down that runway and find the bird, because they don't want to get pulled into engines, right? We've
Just
had
for
it. We've had
one bird. I mean, it seems like
yeah,
there would be birds. It seems like it would run into birds all the time, right? Or no?
yeah,
I mean, how does
yeah.
that?
Yeah, they do hit birds a lot. The question is, did they hit him if they think they hit it over the runway? That's basically it. It's a safety issue. Some birds are bigger than others. We had an emergency a few years back with a Southwest Airlines jet that ingested I think it was a crane, and they lost their engine. You can look it up on YouTube. There's actually uh, video footage of them flying over the Chicago area with the engine on fire because they had injected that bird.
Have you ever had one of these situations where it just went really bad to the point where
Yeah,
like a
well,
plane?
that's one of them. I was in the Tracon on that day with that particular emergency situation. So, yeah, they got the bird. They were originally were going to land. No, I actually think they were a departure. I think they took off and ingested the bird. So the tower called. They said he's going to return to land. He wants to return to land. It was a bird, hit a bird. Okay, fine. We have that pretty often. So we have procedures for that. Take the aircraft around. The controller, we give it to one of the controllers to get him down and onto his runway. And it turns out because the aircraft was on fire, that they were flying at a much faster speed than would be normal when you get close down to the runway. And as a result, they went right through their own final of the runway they were supposed to go to, and went right into the final next to it, and almost ran into an aircraft over there that ended up happening. I mean, they had to peel that aircraft off of their final. So it got ugly pretty fast. That was right
Was
around during COVID.
was everyone okay? Or
Yeah, no, yeah, everybody ended up being okay, but it's amazing how just even a bird can cause such a situation.
yeah. So have you had a lot of people who train with you who just aren't able to do the job because of the stress or just was too complicated or
Yeah, yeah. So what we do here is if someone transfers to Chicago, it's because they are already a controller. So we don't get new hire people. They're not going to send them to us with no experience. So we get people that have worked in really anywhere in the country. So when we get them, the question is, are they coming from a very slow, small facility where they don't really have experience doing what we do? Or are they coming from Atlanta, perhaps, or Dallas? So the people that come from Atlanta or Dallas or something like that, they may be surprised at how busy we are, and they may have a little bit of an adjustment period to learn how to work this amount of aircraft, but they're generally going to be okay, right? Uh, Unfortunately, the people that come from the lower level facilities, it's not always going to be okay for them. That it's just kind of like drinking from a fire hose. We have to teach them so much in a very small amount of time as to how do you work so many planes in such a small area, and in such a fast pace. They're just not used to it. And so, a lot of times they have very bad habits. They don't even know they have because it doesn't matter where they're trained, where they originally came from. They might not have been trained very well. Again, it doesn't really matter because they're not working a lot of airplanes. But once you get to the point where you're working hundreds of airplanes, every little mile matters. Every the way you say your words matter. You have to get to the point. It's almost psychology. Like you have to think, well, if I say it to the pilot this way, how might they misinterpret that? What are they thinking? And it's very linguistic, right? So you may have a sentence you want to say, and you have words you have to say because we have phraseology of certain words we have to say. Maybe you go faster on the words that don't matter and you go slow on the words that do matter so that they hear them. The last thing you want is a pilot not understanding what you're saying. Think of the movie Pushing Tin. I don't know if you've seen that one,
I
but
haven't.
okay, so it's probably the most accurate air traffic control movie as far as the words they're saying and such, but they speak so fast in that movie that I would never speak that. I would never allow a trainee to speak that because you have such a huge chance the pilot's going to go, well, we'll say that again because I didn't get it, right? And if you have to repeat yourself, you're dead because you got too many other planes you need to be talking to, right? You need to, so you want control of the situation. It's just slow and steady, just go.
Yeah. Who was in that one? I've heard of that movie, but who was in it?
Tom Cusack. I'm sorry, not Tom, John Cusack. And who's the guy that would have his feather in his head? Uh, I forget. Oh, Billy Bob Thornton.
Really well done. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So in terms of like talking to each other, like kind of like going back to the rehearsal, would you say that that was true with the pilots kind of is the I mean is what he's saying true or is it just totally like BS, like just kind of like messing with them? Like do you feel like the conversation between the pilots or even you guys and the pilots is good or maybe bad, or you know what I mean? Like do you feel like sometimes you can't, I guess like what he was saying, say exactly what you want to say without the pilot kind of like reprimanding you or maybe the other pilot or whatever, the co-pilot.
Yeah, I can't really can't speak to what goes on in the cockpits with their training. I mean, I have what he talked about. I've definitely heard of that before, that there's been crashes. I know that there's been issues, especially with some of the Asian countries with their in their cockpits. I don't think that was in that show where you have such a system of honor and not being disrespectful to your elders. And so they've had a lot of situations where um, things are going bad and they don't want to say anything to the captain, right? Because he's older and
Yeah.
more mature, what have you. So they're just not saying anything. And so I think a lot of their flight crews are actually trained in the United States as an American thing. So when they go into that cockpit, they kind of act differently. They kind of have to throw those things away. Um, but anyway, I don't know the current situation on the cockpits in the United
But
States.
even like with you, like, do you feel like sometimes if you're talking to the pilot might be giving you attitude, or like the conversation in general just doesn't? I mean, it kind of makes sense for them
Mm.
to be giving attitude just because they probably are under a lot of stress. You know what I mean? I would imagine. But do you feel like that conversation flows well with them?
Yeah, no, it flows just fine. It's very rare that a pilot will give a controller attitude unless the controller's doing poorly. But I mean, they have to be doing very poorly, because they also know that people are training. So a controller may sound like they're not great, but that they're probably in training and someone's sitting right there with them and making sure everything's fine anyway. So as far as pilots being rude to me, I I can't even think of a situation where it's even happened. They're generally very, very professional.
Okay, cool. And then so do you guys deal with helicopters too, or are you just dealing with planes?
Not a lot of helicopters because generally they're flying low level. And so let's say they want to go to an airport, they'll usually just call the airport directly, that control tower for that airport, and they'll just kind of go in low level and they won't talk to us.
Okay, so the planes pretty much when they take off, about how do they just they pretty much immediately go up to what? It's like isn't it like
Mhm.
15,000 feet or whatever? Or how high
It,
are they flying, the planes?
it, all right. So initially it depends on the airport. So at O'Hare, for example, the default is 5,000 feet that they'll come off. And O'Hare itself is maybe 650 feet above sea level, so about 4,500 feet. So when I say 5,000 feet, that's 5,000 feet above sea level. Okay. So that's the default there. Some airports, I know Salt Lake was 10,000 feet, and I, I I would imagine it just varies depending on where you're in the country, whatever works for that particular airport. And then ultimately, when they get to the departure controller at the TRACON, they will then climb them higher, maybe 18,000, 23,000, depending on whatever agreement they have with the center that overlies that, the long range guys. And then they give them to them, and then, you know, the sky's the limit after that. They can go up, higher than 40,000 feet. So it depends on what the pilot files, what they want to do.
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out back to the drone situation. It sounds like the only
Uh,
thing that I really have to like worry about would be helicopters, right? How I feel like we said the lowest they can fly, I think, is what, like 400? Is it 400 feet, right around there?
for for the drone.
Or no, for the helicopters.
Oh, well, that depends on what they're doing as far as, so there's rules about congested areas and rural areas and that kind of thing. And so usually it's about 1,000 feet above the area. So
Okay.
if your drone is supposed to stay around 400, then there should be a buffer there.
Yeah, because that's my main thing is sometimes I'll look out and it almost seems like the helicopter is like, pretty low. And I'm like, how is the helicopter so low? And so obviously at that point I'll bring it down or bring it home.
Hmm.
But I don't know, the whole thing seems just kind of weird to me and I don't really know how much they have control over it. And like I said, I'm totally for flying drones, but at the same time, sometimes I'm like, man, this seems kind of sketchy. Who did you say you send it to when there's a drone situation? And like,
Oh,
are you guys able to see the drones? Are you even able to see the drones? No.
nope. No, no,
So
not at
you said
all.
at some point though, like if there's a drone situation, you'll send it to somebody else. Who was it other?
Yeah, usually it's the Flight Standards District Office. They handle that type of report. Um, the only way we know they're there is when we have an airliner say that they're there, right? So more than once at O'Hare, for example, we've had to move the airplanes away from the normal flight path that they would be on because they said there's a drone out here, right? Maybe at 5,000 feet on the final at O'Hare. And so they got to get it, they'll get them out of there.
Oh, about 5,000 feet. You mean in the sky, up? That's how high the drone is.
Yep.
Oh, so they'll be drones 5,000 feet high.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you have any idea who's able to get a drone that high? Like,
No idea. All I know is we need to get the airplanes away from them. So
yeah.
we don't know if it's a lost drone, you know what I mean? Like you said, when you lose the connection with it, who knows?
But
Um,
even that, I mean, there's no way that I can get mine five. The highest it goes is 1,500 feet. 5,000 would have to be somebody who like maybe built their own or something. You know what
yeah,
I
or
mean?
I would imagine they're commercial units, right? Maybe set up for like photography or who knows what for an actual company. So they're probably large, much larger than the one you're using yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just kind of wondering the one that I like. How in trouble could I get if, like, you kind of mentioned the bird hitting the plane? If I mean, I've heard of people getting in trouble with these things. Like there was a fire in LA, and I think somebody was photographing it, and it hit a helicopter or something. I mean, that sounds like you're probably in pretty serious trouble if that happens, right? Like it's
I would
probably
imagine. I would imagine. Because
probably
not
jail.
only, I mean, you have the government that could come down on top of you, but you could also have lawsuits, right? If an aircraft were to crash, I could imagine every single person on there suing that person or the company that's behind it.
Yeah, it just seems to me like DJI or whoever would make sure that there's no way that this type of thing could happen. Like, but I don't know. As of now, it kind of seems a little too loosey goosey for me. But in terms of the drones, um, we heard all you probably heard back in whenever it was December or whenever there was a bunch of drones flying around everywhere in New Jersey. You heard about that, right?
Yeah. My daughter said she saw one in our neighborhood.
Did we ever figure out what that was? Have you ever seen anything crazy like
I
that?
I I I I've seen crazy things, but as far as an air traffic controller, but as far as that drone situation, I have no idea what it may or may not have been. It could have been just, I don't know. One person says something and next thing you know, everybody says they see the same thing, Or it could have been actual drones flying around that we don't know anything about. So I just don't know.
I mean, did you guys experience it at all? Like, did you guys during that period? Did you guys have a lot of
I
UAPs above
I
O'Hare?
I haven't heard of an uptick there during that time now.
What about just in general? You kind of mentioned, or I saw the question of UAPs on the list.
Mm.
In general, have you seen weird? Like you said, you have seen weird stuff. By that, do you mean UAPs or what do you mean?
Well, yeah, I guess UAP, UFO, whatever, whatever label you want to call it. But the only time I actually saw anything personally, because I'm in radar now, I don't see anything, when I was in the military. So when I was in the Air Force and that was in Tucson. And I mean, you want me to tell the whole story? It might take a few minutes.
It's fine with me. Yeah, I'm pretty interested in this type of
Uh,
thing. So
okay, okay. Um, so essentially, it was night, and my I was in the control tower with my supervisor at the time, and nothing's going on. In fact, we had the runway lights turned off because we had no flying. Generally, in the military, once flying is done for the day, you turn off runway lights because nobody's coming and going. Anyway, um, I look out the window and I see out what looks like on final for our main runway, which would be runway 12. It appears that there's two aircraft on final out there. And when I say that, it looks like there's essentially two red dots flying the approach into the airport. I mean, they were right on what would be our approach, our instrument landing system at the airport. And they're going right down and they're kind of staggered like this, which it was interesting because Tucson is a base that has A-10s. That's mainly what they do. And so they were flying just like a couple A-10s would be flying. They were staggered just like a couple A-10s would be staggered. They were
What do you mean
flying about
what do you mean A10s?
A-10s, the type of aircraft.
Oh, okay.
It's the you can look it up on the Warthog they call it is the slang. The Thunderbolt 2 is the official
Like
name.
a
It's
jet
a
type.
it's a slow moving jet that can do like low level bombing and they have a big Gatling gun on the front of it. It's a really cool airplane. Um, anyway, so the two dots, if you will, the red lights are going down the final. They're flying just like two A-10s, staggered the same speed, same approach they would be flying. The only difference, literally the only difference that in my opinion, is uh, an A-10 normally has the landing light would be kind of like an off yellow. I don't, not yellow, but a little bit darker than that. Whereas these were red. So that's different. So I looked at my soup and I said, "Hey, it looks like there's two aircraft on final. Do we have any flying? Do you know anything?" He's like, "I don't know anything about it." I said, "Do you want me to turn the lights on? Do you want me to turn the runway lights on?" And he goes, "Nope, leave them off unless they call us." And I'm like, "Okay." So I'm watching, they're getting closer and closer and closer. And you can um, if you look at a map and look where the University of Arizona is, that's approximately the final approach fix. And right before you enter the airspace at the Air Force Base. Okay. And right when the first aircraft got to that spot, it started blinking. And then it just appeared to sort of go downward, down towards the U of A. That's it. What happened at when it went down, I have no idea. It just was gone. The other one continued forward and kept going up. Like I said, it was staggered behind, right? So it comes down the final. And then when that second aircraft reached the same spot that the other one had been at, which would be the final approach fix, again, it did a little bit of a blink and then it turned and it started flying to the north essentially. So it went off the flight path and turned north and climbed, and it went over Mount Lemon. So Mount Lemon is this big mountain on the north side of Tucson. You can look that up. And so what was very interesting is the time it took to go from stopping the approach and flying over Mount Lemon was about 3 to 4 seconds. And so if you do the math on that, it's like 20,000 miles an hour, pretty much, to do that. I mean, it was not a speed that you would ever see a normal aircraft do.
And what would you think these things are if you had to just guess? I know you don't know, but if you had to guess, like, are you
And,
more kind of like
well, I can tell you
aliens or
this.
more kind of like they probably can
May,
be explained by like maybe like
I,
spies from a different country or
I
something?
I think it's probably our government that just has things that they don't like to talk about. I mean, for example, um, the F1. Have you ever heard of the F-117
I feel like I've heard
aircraft?
of these, but I
Yeah,
wouldn't
it's
know
one of the
what they
first, it was
are.
one of the first stealth aircraft that when the US government was working on that, they used to come in and bomb our Air Force base in the middle of the night, fake bomb, right, to test their capabilities. And we never knew that they were doing it until they would turn and leave, and then all of a sudden they would tag up on the radar. They were completely invisible to us, just testing that aircraft. So, who knows what other capabilities they have. So anyway, to continue the story, I look at my soup and I'm like, what the heck? I mean, this is crazy. Did you saw it? He's like, I saw it. I go, should we record it, put it in the log, because there's a log you're supposed to record significant events. He was like, nope, we're not putting anything in there. And he's in charge, so what am I supposed to say? Anyway, about 5 to 10 minutes later, the phone rings. And the supervisor, he sits down and he answers the phone. And all he's saying on the phone is no, no, no comment, no comment, no, 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 no. Hangs up the phone. And I'm going, what? Who is that? What is that? Who called? And he goes, do you know who? And he said a gentleman's name. I don't remember the guy's name at this point, but essentially he was the weatherman from the local news channel. I don't remember his name at the time. I think it was Channel 9 News in Tucson. Anyway, so he called and he said that their phone was ringing off the hook because 100 people in Tucson had seen exactly what we had just seen. This aircraft turn and fly and what have you. And they wanted to know what was going on, if it had something to do with the military or anything. And he said no comment. And that was that.
Yeah, I've heard there's like a mountain range over there that's, or I'm forgetting what, something like mysterious mountains or like, or something like magical mountains or something that like supposedly in that area there's like a lot
Uh,
of UFO sightings or
I think
whatever.
I think you're talking about something up around Phoenix. I think there's a I think that's what you're saying. I can't think of what you're talking. I know what you're saying though.
Yeah, and then I've
Yeah.
also heard around where like closer to me, like San Diego area, there's that military base down there. I'm um forgetting the name of that one. Do you know that one down in like Oceanside? Like
Um,
I should know it
well,
because, but there's a
you've got
military base
the
down there.
you got the Navy down there, and trying to think what the Navy base is. I don't remember. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I should know it because I lived close. Used to live close to it. But yeah,
Yeah.
supposedly they've seen a lot of stuff off the coast there or whatever. And I mean, I tend to think that it's like probably something explainable, but who knows? I mean, the stuff that was going on during the drone stuff seemed pretty weird to me because,
Yeah.
well, for one, supposedly there was drones above like LaGuardia, and isn't LaGuardia like, is that like a military airport or what is that? Is it
That's a commercial airport.
okay? But it's a
Yeah.
pretty big airport in, is it the
Yeah.
DC area or
New York.
New York? And then
Yeah.
supposedly they were seeing like a bunch of drones over like even like near like the White House and stuff. And it's like when I looked at this, I'm pretty good with drone stuff, and like, I pretty much kind of like know what drone stuff looks like. And to me, it looked whatever it was. I mean, it looked pretty believable. It didn't look like just people messing around with their drones. And it's like it seemed weird to me. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's a UFOs or anything, but it was like I don't. And there was a bunch of them too. So unless it was AI or somebody just I don't know, a bunch of people were able to manipulate the footage. It really seemed pretty weird to me. But it sounds like at O'Hare, you guys don't really get a lot of that. And even if you do, when whatever you're looking at, does it look kind of like what you're looking at on the screen? Can you see what's actually there, or are you looking at more of kind of like a little like dot kind of thing on the screen movie? You know what I mean?
So yeah, so the aircraft are there's a few things. There is a dot that represents a large item moving around, right? So a regional jet, they're going to have a dot moving around on the scope. And then electronically, that aircraft gives off a signal that we get even further information, the call sign, how fast, how fast it's going, what altitude is it, all that stuff. So it's sort of reporting that information back to us. So theoretically, if let's say the aircraft was flying around with no electricity at all and they're not putting out any signal, there would still be this big dot moving around. Um, as far as drones or UFOs or any of that stuff, I've never seen a dot that then got correlated with a sighting of one of those things, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
So you wouldn't even really be looking at the actual thing. You would be looking at a dot, but you would be able to correlate it to something that somebody saw and be like, oh,
Right,
well, but
right,
you've never
right.
even, you haven't seen that. So
No,
maybe
no.
O'Hare
Even
just
the
isn't.
even the one that happened in Tucson, there was nothing on the radar scope for that situation at all. In fact, I even called their Tracon during that event. I called down to Tucson Tracon. I asked, "Do you see these aircraft on final out here?" And he said, "No, and I'm busy," and he hung up. So that was that. But we also have a radar feed in the control tower. We can we can see what they see, and there was nothing there. Um, the times that I have been in a controller in Chicago and or in Salt Lake for that matter, where the pilot has said they see a UFO, I was not able to correlate any type of anything on the screen itself. So there was one time there was this is just west of the airport in Salt Lake. There's a little mountain range to the west of it that's not as big as the one to the east of it. Anyway, the pilot is flying along there, and he again that's Salt Lake, the Great Salt Lake down there. There's kind of like a little thing called Antelope Island, I believe it's called. It's kind of right almost to the shore. And the pilot says, I don't know what's going on down there, but there's black orbs that are flying around there at hundreds of miles an hour that I can see right over the island right now. So I didn't see anything on radar at that time.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because I mean, supposedly a lot of people do see this type of stuff. I never have. I'm also not like a pilot or anything, but people do see these types of things. But I tend to be like, oh, it's probably just explainable, but who knows? In terms of the actual, you probably don't really know too much about this, but in terms of anything beyond what we're capable of now with regular planes, do you foresee anything um, eventually us even being able to get to the point where we're kind of going beyond regular? Because right now it's just jet fuel or whatever, right? Like kind of like an anti-gravity type thing, or like, I mean, do you think it's even possible to, or do you think the government's at the point where like it sounds like you do think that they might be at the point where they have some sort of
I mean, there's a lot of
crazy
people that
grab?
say there is technology such as that exists. I wish I could say I knew for sure any of that. I mean, I think it would be great if you could move it into the commercial world because then we could get from, one place to another extremely fast, and it, there's a lot of jobs that depend on airplanes maybe not moving so fast. So I don't know how much pushback there'd be to bring on this type of thing. I mean, the aviation industry is massive, right? The amount of controllers and pilots and planes that are required in order to move all these things around.
Yeah, I would imagine though that there would be even like almost maybe even potentially more jobs though if you got to the point where we were able to, use anti-gravity or whatever, like where
Yeah,
it's
yeah, some
going
other type of
faster.
job. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know,
But
maybe.
so in terms of like 9/11, when that happened, I would imagine obviously for anybody involved with that, it would just be absolute chaos. But were the pilots somehow able to kind of like take over just completely take over the plane? Like, how were they able to take over the planes the way like they did? It seems like we'd almost have something like preventing that from happening, or we're just not prepared at the time. You know what I mean?
You talking about the hijackings themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, they got into the cockpit essentially, right? And ever since 9/11, they've had much more sterile cockpits, not allowing people to get in and out. But back then, I mean, there was many commercial flights I remember being on where they didn't even have the door closed, where anybody could have just walked up there and, did something. So I could see how they could get a hold of the controls of the aircraft. And from what I understand, they did have flight training, some fairly basic flight training. They didn't really technically have to land, but, basically control the aircraft. So
So once they got in, they're pretty much just able to completely take over. Like you guys, the air traffic controllers aren't able to like prevent that at all. Like once they get in there,
yeah,
they're just the pilot's fully in control.
yeah, yeah. There's nothing we could do.
And that's still like that today. Like, is there? You would almost think
Mhm.
that there might be some sort of like, okay, we got to like
Like a
take
kill
over this
switch or something.
play or something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, maybe they're working on something like that, but nothing like that exists that I know of.
yeah. Okay, and then lastly, I guess some movies on it, like Soli, and then there was the Denzel Washington one, which I'm forgetting the name of. Um,
Uh, Flight? It's called
Flight, I think, right?
Flight? Yeah.
And I think he was just kind of like an alcoholic
Yeah.
pilot, and then Soli was the one where he just landed in the Hudson
Right.
River. So in
Right.
terms of those situations, I guess how much was air traffic control? I don't know if it was involved at all in flight, but maybe in, in Soli. We're
Yeah, I mean the Hudson River, I mean, there's really nothing you can do. You know, they said we're returning, I think they initially said they were returning to land. Okay, that's an emergency and you would start preparing the airport for that, get the crash trucks going and all that. But then I think it was very shortly after they said, yeah, no, we're just gonna land in the river. And so at that point, as an air traffic controller, all they're doing is making phone calls. That's about the extent of their job. And continuing to work the airplanes that they have. So you can have something major happening, but you have to keep doing the basics nonstop.
so in a situation like that, like in a kind of a crash landing situation, the best place to land it is probably like in the water for the most part.
I think in their situation, it seemed like the best move because otherwise, I mean, besides that water, everything was just buildings. It would have been an amazing loss of death, not just on the aircraft, but on the people on the ground, I think.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
kind of thinking in terms of the weather, like LA, because I live near the LAX, and it seems like that would probably be like almost like the safest one, or anywhere where there's really good weather, right? They probably don't really run into a whole lot of issues there because of the weather, right?
Right. Yep, it's true.
So
Yeah,
would
the
you say
weather's
that
good.
would you say LAX is like one of the safest big airports, and then what would you say was is one of like the most dangerous ones?
Ooh, you talking about just weather-wise?
Um,
Or because I mean, I don't think I could comment on how, if I think an airport is unsafe. In fact, I don't even know. I wouldn't, I mean, it sounds more mysterious than it is. I actually don't know of an airport that I would consider to be unsafe.
well, by unsafe, I mean, is there certain ones? Obviously, you don't really want to like paint a certain airport in a bad light, but is there certain ones that just like kind of like by fact have had more bad situations happen, probably because of weather or whatever, or like you know what I mean? Or no? Or would you say they're all pretty much equally safe?
Yeah, I mean, obviously some are going to have more weather events than others. So I would say the further you get to the northeast, then you're going to have more issues, right? So um, Buffalo, for example, has so much snow constantly getting on the ground. So um, it's worse weather, but I don't know if I would necessarily call it unsafe because the pilots know what they're getting into. They know that there's going to be snow or there's going to be fog, so they'll delay the flight or they'll go to a different airport. So I'd be surprised to see the statistics being any worse as far as crashes or incidents at those airports.
Yeah, I would almost think not necessarily because of the pilot or the air traffic controllers, but just because the weather is so bad, like in Alaska or something. I wouldn't imagine. I don't even know if there's a big one. I mean, there's probably got to be a big one in Anchorage or something, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I
Yeah.
mean, I would
Alaska
just.
has a lot of plane crashes, but it's because the pilots are flying on their own and they're doing their own thing. So there's not an air traffic control element to it. They're just going in and out of mountain
Oh,
valleys
really?
and oh yeah. Yeah.
Is that even legal just to be able to like be
Yeah.
totally like free flying?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
As long as you're not there's all types of airspace, but mainly if you're not anywhere near an airport or maybe a military restricted area, outside of those things, you can pretty much do anything you want. You can fly an aircraft all over the place. And so in Alaska, they use aircraft to do, I mean, even deliver mail in some of the locations. And so it requires little airplanes going in bad weather all the time.
And those ones aren't attached to like the big. Was there? What's the big airport there?
Anchorage?
Anchorage. Okay,
Yeah.
so those ones aren't necessarily attached to the Anchorage. They're just
No.
going from smaller.
Just doing their own thing. I mean, they could take off and land in Anchorage. They could, but most likely they're taking off and landing at a smaller airport or maybe even a grass landing strip. They can do that. These types of aircraft that are tooling around in Anchorage or in that area, they're they tend to be able to land on bad terrain. They have big tires. They have very fat wings, so they can take off and land at very slow speeds. So they're able to get in and out of very small areas that most aircraft can't do.
It just seems kind of weird to me if they're not attached to air traffic control at all. Like you guys aren't even able to see them. It seems like that could be
Um,
a real issue if you have some guy flying around and like you guys with the big planes aren't even able to see the smaller ones.
Right.
flying around.
Well, if they get to an altitude, that would be an issue, kind of like you talked about the drones being at an altitude. They would then have to communicate with air traffic control in that situation. So when I say you have these smaller craft that crash a lot in Alaska, they're generally very low level. They're going in valleys and along mountainsides, places where you're not going to have um, airplanes that are being worked by air traffic control.
Okay, and then one last question about the drone is, what would you say a safe height would be? Like we said, about 400 or 500 feet.
Mhm.
Yeah. So anything below
Yeah.
that is fine. Anything above that could be.
Yeah, the only way any aircraft is going to be lower than really 1,000 feet is if they're landing. So you've already said you're not allowed to fly inside the air traffic or say the airport's airspace. So once you eliminate that, the only way a pilot is going to be that low is if they're taking off from maybe a private airport or landing at a private airport. They're all over the place if you look at an aviation map.
Even helicopters, or like for the most part, won't be below 1,000.
Probably not. Not usually. No.
Okay.
No, I mean
Eh,
that's not to say they couldn't be maybe involved with some sort of policing or some air rescue type situation, in which case then of course they would have to go lower for to do their mission.
Okay. And then would you say that it's more stressful or difficult to be a pilot or an air traffic controller?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say for me personally, being a pilot was very boring. You have a lot of times that are exciting, taking off and landing, but for all the time in between, it's it's really boring for me. I know that a lot of people they love it. That's great. Whereas air traffic control doesn't have a lot of dips like that, at least where I work, where it's busy a lot and you're constantly having to think and do things. So I would say I'm gonna go with air traffic control. Is more
Okay.
stressful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean the thing that would be just the scariest to me is just the idea of being that high in the air like so often would probably get to me just
Yeah.
because I don't really. I mean, I can fly, but I don't like to. I try and do it as little as possible. So the job itself sounds like it's not that difficult, but just
Yeah.
being that high all the time would probably get to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say that in an emergency situation, if I was flying an aircraft that had a major problem with it, that would be definitely more stressful than being an air traffic controller because, your life is on the line, whereas at the end of the day, we get to go home from our job.
Yeah, and then I just thought about this. Some of the stuff there's been like a lot of crashes recently. I think, like you said, a lot of them were kind of in Asia or whatever. What do you think's going on? The reasons you probably heard of a lot of these crashes recently. I don't really know too much about them, but what do you think is going on with these?
There has been a little bit of an uptick, but I just think it's a statistical anomaly. I don't, to me, it doesn't seem like there's any particular reason why there should be more this year versus 5 years ago. I That's my opinion. I don't know. I don't think, I mean, there's nothing that's changed in the way we do the job. The separation that between aircraft is still all the same. The rules are still all the same. It hasn't changed at all. I mean, if I'd say one thing that has changed is a lot of the pilots don't have as much experience as they had before. So you have a lot of people in cockpits that have way less hours than they may have had in the past. If that's somehow playing into it, perhaps I don't know. But generally, if you're talking about a commercial aircraft, the person sitting in the captain's seat generally is going to be have a lot of experience. So I don't know. It's probably just a statistical anomaly.
Okay, and then I don't know if there was any air traffic controlling. I mentioned the movie Flight. Was there anything in that about air traffic controlling? I kind of
I don't remember.
yeah. I don't. I
I
don't even
remember. I
think.
remember. I
I don't
liked
even
it.
think I've seen
It
the
was a good movie,
movie.
but
I heard it was a good movie, but
yeah.
okay. So yeah. Lastly, if you could just plug your website and then also what you do again, teaching.
Oh, yeah. So I do have for those people that would like to be an air traffic controller and they're not sure how to get it together, I do offer a coaching service at airtrafficcoaching.com. and I'm more than happy to teach someone everything I know, help them get where they want to be. Um, that's about all I have to say about that. Um, what else? What else do you want to talk about?
Well, and like you said before, that isn't your own personal thing. That's like linked to
Nope,
the.
that's not linked. That's my personal thing.
Oh, okay. But I thought
Yep.
before you, so you teach for the government or for the,
I
but
Yeah,
then you
during the
also have your
day.
own thing. Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. During the day, I teach controllers, and then on my spare time, I teach controllers also that need help with their career. But it's more of a advisory type service that I provide.
Okay. So
Yeah,
you're doing kind of both.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's, I mean, obviously teaching, I would imagine would be better than actually doing it, right? Like, do you enjoy the teaching aspect more?
Well, it's not as fun, that's for sure. I mean, the air traffic control can be a fun job. You can have a good time doing it. There's none of that in the actual teaching. It's very boring, to be honest with you. And it's also hard working with students who, who are struggling. You try and teach them as best you can, but sometimes they're just not going to make it, unfortunately. You put work into them and they work hard and sometimes it's just not enough. They just don't have the experience. So that's kind of a downer having
Yeah.
to work with that situation. Yeah.
And are you the person who kind of tells them like, "Hey, man, like this probably isn't for you," or like do you kind
I
of just let
might
them?
I have said that to people. It's not technically my job. It would someone else they might fail a test and someone else will officially tell them that. But because I'm working with them on a one-on-one situation for so many days, it can be very stressful for them the entire time, and we'll have lots of conversations about where their career, is going to go in the future.
Even in just learning how to do it, it's stressful. Like they're not even like really actually doing it at that point, right? They're just kind of.
Correct. Correct. It's all simulated, but that I'm working with at this point with the students, and it's, like I said, when they come from a place that's slower, which is really every place, but some places are extremely slower. The amount of they just have no idea when they get here. I think there's a little bit of hubris that humans have where if you haven't done something or and someone else has accomplished this and they do this thing, then they're then you, a person tends to think there must be an angle, right? I know that before I ever got to a busy air traffic facility, I thought, well, it's all regimented. The airplanes are all going to come in. They're just in a line. It's all set up. There's no weird thing. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's just and so a lot of people tell themselves that, and then they transfer in and they find out that is not the case at all. That it's way more difficult than they could have ever imagined. And and
Yeah.
you and you just watch them, unfortunately, a lot of times they sink and it's just too much.
Well, I mean, you're dealing with other people's lives too, and it's like kind of like scary to even bring it up, but it's like when you're doing the job, if you make a mistake, potentially a plane can not only a person's life, but a whole
Oh yeah.
plane full of people could potentially
Yes.
die because of your mistake, right? And that
Yes.
probably unfortunately does happen or has happened.
Oh yeah.
But you seem like the type of person, I don't know, just from what I'm getting now, is that like you maybe seem like the type of person who's pretty calm under pressure and almost kind of likes the maybe likes the stress or likes the just the situation. I don't know. Is that how you are? Like,
That's a chicken and egg question, and I've actually thought about that. Like, did I end up in this job because I was drawn to the stress, or was I successful because I already was a stressful person? Like, I don't know. Um, but it does take a certain type of mindset to do it, knowing that if you screw up, that people could die. And I've worked with people that have literally been speaking to an aircraft and the pilot, and they died. Luckily, that never happened with me. It came close, but I never had to hear someone's last words, thankfully.
yeah, do those people when that happens, do they tend to like quit at that point, or like do they go forward or?
Some people move forward and some people are done. How can the human brain compartmentalize that, I guess? Some people they come into work the next day, okay, whatever. And then other people, they're never going to be a controller again.
Yeah, I'm the
Depends.
type of person where I mean, I think that I could probably do the job itself, but actually being in the situation where you have to make, split decisions and so much is probably going on at the same time. I wouldn't be able to handle that. I've had jobs like that where I can't really like focus on like more than like, one thing at a time, and you're having to
Yeah.
like focus on like five things at a time or whatever, and it's just like, oh man.
y- Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could do the job. It's just a matter of learning how to do it. There is a process, when someone transfers in and we go through, how do you do this, right? And so if someone comes from some place, they haven't worked a lot of airplanes, and they come to a place then like Chicago, and now it's how do we do it faster? How do we do it more efficient? Next, 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 next. So it becomes like, it almost militaristic in a way of the way you're teaching them, and some people, they can get that going, that click, boom, 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 boom. I think everybody can get there. It's a question of how long will it take you to get there, right? So maybe you get there in a few months to a year or two. Okay, we can work with that. Maybe it would take you 4 years or 8 years. We can't work with that, right? Because waiting behind that trainee, unfortunately, is 20 other trainees that they need to go through their training. And every day that someone is taking an extra amount of time, that's time that someone else can't get trained.
Yeah, and how long does the whole like there's obviously no it sounds like there's no college or anything that would like prepare you for this. So all the training is done through you or through the
So
the
yeah, so
center.
there's a couple schools. So first of all, you have the academy in Oklahoma City. So how someone gets to the academy, there's a few ways. First of all, they could have went to college for air traffic control. That actually is a thing. I didn't personally do it. I personally feel it's generally a ripoff because you're going to get a degree in something that I went in the Air Force and they taught me for free and gave me a paycheck to teach me. And that's why I chose to go in the Air Force, was that they would teach me air traffic control. Anyway, so you learn air traffic control somehow, some way, and you get sent to the Oklahoma City campus, and they teach you uh, how to be an air traffic controller in the FAA. That's 4 months or more, depending on which job you're going to go to. Then you get sent to your first facility. At that facility, depending on the type of facility, training could be a year, it could be 4 years. It depends on where that first place is. If it's a center, like we talked about those air route traffic control centers, the big ones, their training is usually very, very long. At least, I'd say at least 3 years. Some places it's over 4 years that someone will be in training at that place. So essentially, they're getting a bachelor's degree in air traffic control, right at that point. A small facility, though, they could be done pretty quick. They get checked out in 6 months, a year, and now boom, they're an air traffic controller. Um, where it becomes difficult for a controller is when now they decide, well, I want to go live in a different city. So let's say you said you're inside in San Diego.
I'm actually in the Inland Empire, which is east of Orange County, but yeah, that area.
Okay. Yeah. So let's say someone was sent to a little control tower there, and they did they're there and they're like, oh no, I want to go live. I want to go live in. I really, really want to live in New York, for instance, if that's what they choose to do. So they want to get transferred to New York. They get transferred in there somehow. They put their resume in. So they get transferred to New York, and now it's almost like you're starting over again. So they may have went through the academy and they went through the training at their local facility, and now they're going to have to go through training there, which might be a year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe, depending on how well they take to it. So there's a lot of training and it always resets. So even if I were to be a controller and even with my experience where I'm at, if I said, I want to go live in Dallas, it starts from the beginning, essentially. Would it, would I be able to do it easier than someone who hasn't worked airplanes in a great amount? Yeah, obviously, but you still have to go through the process because every airport is different.
Okay, and if I wanted to become an air traffic controller, like I could either go through you directly or the what's it called? Like the airport or like what would
So yeah, so there's lots of ways to get there. You could go, like I said, you can get a degree. There's several colleges that have air traffic control programs. Some are 2-year degrees, some are 4-year degrees, and they basically teach you air traffic control. You can go in the military, which all branches have some form of it. Air Force has the most air traffic control facilities that are worth anything and teach you something. Then you have Army, Navy. They all have various air traffic control functions that someone could join, which also gives them experience. So whether you went through a school or you went through the military, you could then apply and go into the FAA after that. Um, Occasionally, about once a year, the FAA will hire people straight off of the street with none of that experience. They'll have just a blanket, be a controller. And I think the requirements are very, very small. Maybe I think a college degree of any type or working experience of any type for the most part, I think is what it is. And so you apply and if you get accepted, you go to Oklahoma City and you do your training all completely there.
so you need a college degree before you can even go become an air traffic controller?
The off the street hiring, or like I said, or you just have work experience.
Okay.
So if like you could be 22 and have worked at, I don't know, a job for 4 years straight. I think you fit the requirements to apply at that point.
Okay, but in terms of your private company or where you work at the airport, like what's the difference between those two? Like
Oh, how do you,
I could either
oh, you mean,
choose to go to you directly and just learn through you, or I could go to the airport and learn through you. You know what I mean? Because
okay.
you
Yeah,
have
no,
your
I
own
think
thing,
you're,
right?
yeah, no, no, no. I think we get a little confused. Um, you could transfer in to Chicago. That is an FAA thing, right? That's the only way you can become a controller in Chicago is you go through, you're somewhere else and you transfer, right? You're already an employee. The thing that I talked about, the coaching I do, that's just that's a career advice thing that has nothing to do with getting you at a particular place or getting hired at this place or that's not related.
But it's career advice for being an air traffic controller only, right?
Correct.
Specifically. Okay.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, last, I don't know how much longer you want to go, or if you just want to wrap it up, but last I usually ask, what you're into in terms of music, movies, TV shows, podcasts, books, whatever, just you're into at the moment.
Well, I don't know if you can see the guitar on the screen back there, but
Yeah,
that's
I did.
been my passion for the last about a year and a half is when I started. So I am I learned a lot of Decemberist songs and some of the classics, obviously. You have to learn those, but that's mainly what I do at this point. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Are you in like a
Eh,
band or anything? Or are you just playing solo
No,
or?
no, yeah, it's all solo at this point. So maybe a band someday. I don't know. Seems
Yeah,
a little far off.
I actually play guitar and bass. I haven't really been, I've been more into the whole like YouTube video podcasting social media thing, but I want to get back
Yeah.
into the playing guitar. I just for me it's kind of hard just to play by myself. I kind of get like bored after a while. I kind of need a band, but recently I've kind of reconnected with some guys who want to do I used to be in a band with them and they want to start up a band, so hopefully but as you know,
Oh,
once you get, into your 40s or older or whatever, it's hard to kind of like reconnect and get a whole band together when people have families and stuff. You know what I mean?
yeah. How long you been playing?
I mean, I started playing when I was probably 15, 16, and I'm 42 now, so 25 years or
Oh,
whatever.
amazing. Oh, you must
But
be great.
I mean, I would hope to say, but like I said, I haven't been playing as much as I used to. Like I used to be in I was in like two bands. I mean, we were pretty serious. That's what I wanted to do. But
Yeah.
as you know, it's not the most. It's hard to make it in music or any type of entertainment.
for
But
real.
I love doing it, and I like bands like the Decemberists and kind of like that folk indie.
Yeah,
Who else are
yeah.
you into?
Lately I've been playing a lot of the 1975.
Okay,
And
I like the
for
1975.
yeah,
Yeah,
for so I mean they're obviously a little more poppy, but when you play them solo, there's ways to do the songs where they're actually really cool. Some of the songs, I
yeah.
think.
They're actually a really good band. Like when they first came out, I kind of was like, oh, this is a little too kind of dancey poppy for me. But the more
Yeah,
they've got, the longer they've gone, the more I've gotten into them and been like, oh, they're actually like a
yeah,
really good, talented
yeah,
band.
yeah. Well, I find myself I gravitate towards songs that are reverent, that have a message and like either a cool story or just something sad about them, whatever. And I find that a lot of their songs definitely fit that bill. Same thing with the Decemberists, which is kind of why I gravitate towards that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like what 1975 songs have you learned? Because
Well,
a
like,
lot of them are like only guitar. They're almost like kind of keyboards too, right? And stuff.
yeah,
So it seems kind of complicated.
it is. I find myself, obviously you're not going to do keyboard on a guitar, but like I find like this, you kind of, whatever strumming pattern I'm choosing to do, it's almost like it's trying to recreate a lot of the other sounds that are going on, as opposed to the real guitarist might just be doing four downstrokes, and who knows what they're doing. But like About You is the most recent one that I've been learning, and I can almost not play it without crying. Like when you get into the lyrics, like Jesus, I mean, you're essentially singing to your loved one, they're dead, and I mean that's what the song's about. It's brutal, you
Oh
know.
wow, yeah, I didn't even know that. Was that
Yeah.
true from him? I don't.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
because I think
I
that's
don't
the
know, but
newest album, right? About You, or is it the newest album that it's
I'm not
on?
sure. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
I saw them at on YouTube at I think it was Madison Square Garden, and the whole thing was kind of like a cool setup where they had like a house, and then like each one of them kind of came down into like the house and like started playing,
Yeah,
and
I
then
saw them in concert in Chicago. They had that house set up. It was
oh
amazing.
yeah, and he does
Yeah,
the
yeah.
whole thing where he's like eating meat or whatever, and like, did you see that part? There's like
I
a
don't remember
part,
the
there's like a weird part in the YouTube video which became kind of like, I guess you could say controversial, or people were talking about it, where like he starts like eating meat and like kind of he's like watching TV and smoking and drinking. And he has like a wife beater on. And he's like,
I definitely remember the smoking and the drinking at the concert. And he was at
yeah,
a piano, whatever. Yeah. Go on.
he's just like a pretty interesting guy. Well, I think he has like a lot to say about kind of like, I think his whole point was kind of like toxic masculinity or whatever, and like like just being like a. I think he was trying to portray. I don't really know exactly, but trying to portray like maybe like an abusive father or something like that. It was a
Oh, wow.
pretty interesting kind of like a whole show they put on.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I'm definitely into them. And then there's a couple. I feel like the Decemberists are kind of are like. Have you heard like the Mountain Goats, or like I'm trying to think of other bands like this, or like Death Cab for Cutie is kind of like them, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Definitely heard. Yeah. I've listened to a lot of them. Um,
yeah.
what else are you into?
I'm into indie rock. I mean, honestly, kind of similar to what I don't. I'm not a huge fan of the Decemberists. I don't really love that guy's voice, but like besides that, like he kind of has that weird, almost like
That's why my wife doesn't like them. It's the same. She says he seems like an accountant to her.
yeah, they come off kind of very straight laced or whatever. But
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah, I'm into stuff like that. 1975. I'm trying to think. A lot of the times I had to like look, but me and my fiance just saw I don't know if you heard like My Chemical Romance at
Yeah.
yeah, we saw them at Dodger Stadium, and then we saw a band called Brand New. I don't know if you heard of Brand New.
No, they
That's
must be
going.
new.
They're actually not new, but they're not as big as like My Chemical Romance. We saw them in LA, and then I mean most of the stuff I'm into is similar to you. It's like indie kind of, not mainstream, even though 1975 is kind of mainstream. It still kind of has that indie kind of, there's a band called Geese that I'm into, um, which is, kind of a little bit on the weirder side. But then also like Blink 182 and, you know,
Yeah.
for pretty much just, rock, indie rock,
Yeah.
pop punk, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. What do you like? Do you like to play the guitar more or bass?
I like guitar more. Um, but I always kind of ended up playing bass in the band because I think they just like needed a bass player. And
Pretty common.
yeah, and it's kind of fun to play the bass. There's not too much pressure on you as a bassist, as opposed to like the lead guitar or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't think I could be like I can't be a lead singer because I can't sing. But um, yeah, I really do. I think it's a great thing that you picked up. And
I love it.
yeah, how are you
Yeah.
learning your music? Is it mainly just online, like you just go and get the chords or whatever?
Yeah, well, all my lessons were from watching YouTube videos, and that was it. I probably should go get a real lesson at some point, but now I just download the music sheets and initially I'll play along with the band, just kind of get, how do we want to do the vibe or whatever, but once I get the chords down and I'll just do my own version of it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then let's see. Yeah, so are you taking it? Yeah, how'd you get into it? Like what like kind of
I
got you into it in the first place?
I, I bought my wife a guitar for her birthday. And I got her lessons and everything. And 2 weeks into it, she said, I don't want to do it.
Oh, wow.
She said that she was done. And I was like, okay. And I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later, it's just sitting there, and I go, you know what? Maybe I could just look on YouTube on how to learn the guitar. And there's so many teachers on YouTube that can show you what to do. And that was it. I haven't missed hardly a single day in a year and a half, maybe I had to go on vacation a couple times, but other than that, I've missed maybe 5 days total. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That worked out. Like you bought it for her, but then you still get to play it. Why
yeah.
wasn't she into it? She just
Yeah,
didn't
she
like it.
wasn't digging it. Yeah, wasn't digging it. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what she said, but she didn't like it.
Yeah.
So I got unfortunately her birthday present, or sorry, yeah, her birthday present was is my guitar. So I really need to go get an electric, but I don't know, I keep putting it off because I do know it's harder to play the acoustic. So I'm like, well, if I can get everything down on here, then I don't know. I need to go get one though.
What kind of guitar is it?
It's acoustic. Yeah.
No,
You're
I
talking
mean
about
what
brand?
brand? Yeah.
It's I think it's a Yamaha.
It's a pretty good one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a Yamaha. I mean, it wasn't too expensive. I want to say it was maybe $600 or something. So it was, it's okay. But
Yeah.
I go on.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Once you get like the electric guitar, then you get the amp. It that can be pretty cool because like just hearing
Yeah.
that loud, electric
Yeah.
sound is
Yeah.
is it's
I'd
fun to
like to
play.
get to the layering. I hear about, like, you can record this and layer over and play along with that kind of. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can get to
Uh,
yeah, if you can get to a point where like you're doing it kind of all yourself, that would be fun. Like you program the drums and you have the bass and
yeah.
you like loop the guitars. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. How long did it take you to get really good at bar chords?
It's been so long, it's kind of hard to say, but I would probably guess um 3 to 6 months. It's hard. Yeah, but like I said, I was like 15 when I did it, so
Oh, wow. Okay.
it's been so long. But it probably took me about 6 months to a year before I like probably was able to actually play. I would guess. What about
Hmm.
you? Is it pretty much
Oh,
taking you about?
I'm still struggling with them, the bar chords. They're brutal. I mean, it depending on which ones. Some are easier than others, obviously, but you know. Some chords I've been playing a lot of Beatles, and like some chords I don't even know how you would move your fingers to even do them when I look them up. The Beatles have so many chords in their songs, like why are we even doing why are we doing this chord?
Like they're making up chords and stuff, probably.
Yeah, I mean, you've got fingers that are just on first fret and your pinky's down on the fifth doing something like what's going on?
Yeah, like you said, the electric guitar is easier to do it, to be able to play kind of faster and move around faster like that because
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
thinner, it's not as hard to press down the strings. But
Yeah, yeah.
yes, so what else are you into besides music? Movies, TV shows, podcasts,
Um,
books?
I mean, my wife and I we started a podcast recently. We've had a few guests on. And can I mention the name? Do you mind?
Oh no, yeah, for sure. I
Oh, it's called
Yeah.
Into the Mist. And essentially what it is, um, we interview people that have had something happen to them, whether it could be paranormal, it could be a mystery situation, it could even be a crime situation. And so we bring them on and they essentially talk about what went down. And we record it, edit it out, and then my wife and I will have a conversation afterwards is what we thought about it, in the podcast as to did it seem like bullshit? Like, what do we think about the story? And that's that. So that's pretty much how it goes. We've made a handful of videos so far. None of them are published. They're all hidden. So pretty soon they'll all hit the YouTubes and the other
Oh wow.
platforms
Well,
too.
yeah,
So
I didn't know about that, so that's pretty cool. I mean,
yeah.
do you plan on uh doing something with it? Like, do you want to kind of like turn it into something, or are you just kind of doing it for fun?
Well, we're doing it obviously to have fun with each other. We laugh our asses off when we do it. I mean, it's a good time. Whether or not anybody ends up actually watching the stuff, who knows? I don't like to think down those lines because there's so many podcasts. It's easy to get lost in the noise, you know.
Yeah, it's hard. Like I've been doing this for a while, and at some point, like I don't know, a year, 2 years in, I kind of like gave it a rest for like a year, and then after a year, I was kind of like, why am I not doing this? I enjoy doing it, and I might as well just keep doing it. I wasn't really making any money doing it, so I was like, maybe I should like do other things. But now I'm back doing it again, and it's just fun. And I kind of feel like I don't know. I've Most of the people I've talked to, I kind of feel like everybody's kind of in the same boat that I'm talking to, at least, where it's like their podcast hasn't gotten big, but then every once in a while I'll talk with someone and I'll be, how's your podcast doing? Like, it's pretty hard for me. And they're like, oh, like we're doing really good. So you never know. Like, like I
Yeah,
think that would be like kind of like a
yeah,
dream job if you actually could make it doing a
yeah.
podcast.
Quit your regular jobs and just mess around. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And speak,
I'll send you a couple links. You can
yeah,
maybe if you have time, you can check one out or not.
you're not able to listen to it at all now though, publicly.
I can the links. Yeah, I can send the links. You can listen to it if you have the link, but they're hidden on
Okay.
YouTube,
But
so
event and
they don't count against the algorithm. They're until we flip them, and go live. So
they're full
yeah,
videos.
they're so they are so basically it's mostly audio, um, with just our logo, on the screen. Is mainly what it is on YouTube. But and so really, you can listen to it on any podcast platform. But um, sometimes the guest will say something and we'll put images on the screen that represent what's going on. Like I like to bring on like maps, of so we're talking about this particular forest. Okay, so we're gonna get in there. So we'll bring in the maps of the forest, we'll zoom in, we'll bring in maybe pictures the person has of that night of what went down, that kind of stuff. So we're putting that kind of stuff on the screen. So you don't have to watch it on YouTube, but it gives us a little bit more context.
Yeah. Also, I feel like it's kind of hard to like be off of YouTube, as YouTube is so massive, and that's where like most people actually listen to their podcasts. I guess is I've heard is on YouTube. So
Really?
you almost like kind of want that video element too. Like most people, it's almost kind of weird when it's only audio. You almost want something to like look at.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the paranormal, I'm like not like I am into the paranormal stuff. I had a guy on here a little while back who went over. He was really into like cryptids and stuff like that, and the whole thing's interesting to me. Do I believe in it? Like, not really, but then I'm also kind of like, what are these people actually seeing? Because I feel like they're telling the truth.
Yeah.
But there was one guy, he used to be on a podcast called Yeah, But Still, which was like one of my favorite podcasts. It was more like comedy. And then they broke up and he started his own called Otherworld. I don't know if you've heard of Otherworld, but
No.
it seems like it's doing pretty good. I think it's a really good kind of genre to be that or like true crime are good genres for podcasts because I think that there's so many people who are like into that kind of like my fiance is
Yeah.
really heavily into that and um yeah, I think that and he's doing the same thing as what you're doing where like he's talking to guests and the guests is sharing their experience. How do you
Cool.
find your
Cool.
guests? Like do you just have people?
We mainly off Reddit. Yeah. So we just contact people on we just read it, look for, oh, this person said this happened to them. We'll just contact them. We're starting a sub version of the show in the near future where essentially we're calling it Intimate Shorts, where instead of us interviewing the person because we don't think their story is enough for a whole podcast, instead what we're having them do is just record themselves telling the story, maybe like 5 minute story, emailing it into us, and then we're going to have multiples of that in one episode, and then we'll react and talk about each one of the stories as they come in. So that's another subversion of it we're doing. So
Yeah, that's one thing I thought was interesting about the Otherworld podcast is it's mainly the person just telling their story. Like I'm kind of surprised by the guy who's doing it. Like he's not really asking like talking to them. The whole thing is edited so that it's just the person kind of telling their story. And I'm like, that seems like it would be kind of like relatively easy just to have somebody come on your podcast and tell their story.
yeah,
And all you really have to do is just kind of like do the intro and then that's all
yeah,
he
yeah,
does is just put up their story. And
yeah,
like I said, when I listen to most, I've listened to it and like most of the time, the funny thing is like I kind of like believe the people what they're saying, but then I also am kind of like this is like sounds like bullshit to me. So it's like I don't really know
it's
what to
hard
think,
it's
you
hard to
know?
say because obviously we're not there, you know. um the people I've interviewed for our podcasts, there's some extraordinary claims they make, and the thing that matters to me most is they believe it, and you can tell they believe what they're saying,
Yeah.
whether it was exactly what they remember. I mean, there's no way for anybody to know, really.
Yeah. And I think it's just because the fact that I've never experienced anything spiritual or paranormal that I'm don't believe it. But yeah, who am I to say that they have? I really kind of wonder what's going on. I had another guy come on and he actually had like he was kind of like hearing voices. Like he at some point he or yeah, at some point he was like paranormal. What was it called that he was kind of like hearing voices. So I think it almost sounded like he was like schizophrenic at some point. And
Mm,
but he kind of like I think that his whole I think he kind of like believed that what he was hearing wasn't it was coming from somewhere else. Like it was like because they were saying things to him that he didn't even know
yeah,
about.
yeah.
And so it's kind of like, what is go? And then he also said that he was seeing those
uh,
orbs like at night. Like he would go out in his backyard and he would see like orbs come to him. And I was like, I kind of thought that was like a hallucination or like he was just seeing things. And he was like, no,
yeah,
they're really there. And I'm like, well, how do you know they're really there? And he's like, because I can see them and I know that they're really there. So I'm kind of like, I don't know, like maybe somebody should like do some sort of investigation into like I mean, I'm sure there are people who do investigations. It just seems like none of the investigations kind of come to anything. Like we're never able to kind of like prove what it
yeah, yeah,
actually is.
yeah. Well, one thing I get hung up on all the time is the fact that everybody's got a camera in their pocket now, and yet, where are all the videos, right?
Yeah,
Like people
exactly.
capturing things. There's a billion cameras running around. Like someone's got to get something that's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's definitely a ghost or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I think I said that to him. I was like, why don't you take out your camera and film it or whatever? And it's like, I don't know. And it's like, I mean, there are stuff like there is stuff as you probably know, you've probably seen those like Tic Tacs videos or whatever like where
Yeah.
like the pilot will film or the will film something, but it's always so not clear. It's kind of like a really like
Yeah.
fuzzy kind of
Yeah.
image. And it's like you said, with such
Yeah.
good phones, you think that we'd be able to get something really good. Well, another thing that you said too was with the guy that you were working with in the military, he didn't really want to report it. So it sounds kind of like a lot of people don't really, maybe if they see something, they don't want to talk about it, especially in the military, because they heard like you'll get like made fun of or whatever, right? Is that
Yeah.
his main reason
Yeah.
for not wanting to talk about it?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, we also, as air traffic controllers, we have medicals, so medical requirements to do the job. And so if they sniff out that they think is anything wrong with you mentally or anything like that, you're done. You're finished. So things like that, you're taking a chance of them saying, "Oh, well, maybe you're seeing things. Okay, you're not an air traffic controller anymore now." Instead, you could just say, "You know what? Maybe I just didn't see anything that night."
Yeah. And but I mean the thing is that like since there was two of you, you would almost think like, oh, well, we both saw it. I'm assuming at this time you probably couldn't like bring out your phone and film it, right?
Mm-mm,
Because you didn't
no.
have one.
No, that was
Probably.
1991, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you would think that just the fact that there's two of you saying you saw it would be better than it was just one. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of people don't really want, yeah, to admit that they're seeing things basically. But then some people
I have
do.
another I have another quick story if you want to hear it about Tucson.
Yeah.
One of the perks of being an air traffic controller is we were allowed to go fly with the police helicopters. So you'd go to their wherever they took off from Tucson International Airport, and you would go to their office and you could fly around Tucson with them as they chased people or whatever, doing their thing. Anyway, so we went there one night, me and a friend, and we had to sit down at a table where they would do the briefings. You put on the flight suits and they talk about what we're going to do and what have you. And I look over and there's their lockers are next to us. And on one of the lockers is a hand-drawn picture of a UFO. Um, it's like your classic kind of little circle thing. And it's a cartoon, like it's crayons, right? And under it is a helicopter. And I look at it and I said to the cop, I said, what's that about? And he goes, anyway, so we had this incident with a UFO when we were out flying, and the guys at work, they make this picture to make fun of us, and they put it on our locker. And then he goes on to tell the story of essentially they were out over the city one night and they're in flying their helicopter low level and a UFO appeared over the top of them, and essentially was going downward on top of them and trying to crash them into the ground. And so they kept going lower, lower, like they were in the trees as this thing was trying to essentially force them to crash or to land at the very least. And I don't know how it resolved itself. It went away. I can't remember if they said it flew away or they were able to get away, but um, that also had people calling 911 and asking what that thing is that's trying to crash the helicopter over their houses.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Do you know if the government FAA is doing anything to kind of or what they are doing about it to try and figure out if there's anything weird going on?
No idea. That's not privy to that.
I think that's kind of like what's hard about it is like nobody really has any idea, you know, unless you're like you are privy to it, but then if you are like you're probably not going to come out, you're not going to say like they're not if they're not
Right.
saying something.
Right.
So it's kind
And
of like all
everything's
we can
very
do is
compartment. I'm sorry. I was going to say everything's very compartmentalized too. So you may know a little of this thing, but do you know the big picture? Probably not.
yeah. And they came out like a year ago or so, and I think they kind of said there are UAPs out there, but I don't think I think they were kind of like we don't really even know what they are. but
Yeah.
we know that there is something out there, right? Do you remember that? But then it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
nothing like becomes of it. It's just kind of like they're out
Yeah.
there. I mean, I kind of wonder if they're like, yeah, if they could just be man-made, either from another country, or I would imagine like or even this situation might be some sort of like weird prank that some guy built some massive drone and was just like messing with them or something, or because I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine like
I don't
this
know.
type of thing be some sort of alien, or I wouldn't really think that it would come over and try and like lower. It was a helicopter they were in, right? Kind
Yeah.
of like try
Yeah.
and. I
Yeah.
wouldn't imagine that aliens would be doing this type of thing. I would almost think that this might be like some sort of like really messed up prank that somebody was doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, in my opinion, the odds of it being people or beings flying across the universe just to squish a helicopter seems ridiculous.
Yeah, or whatever they're doing doesn't really seem like they're doing much of anything intelligent. It just seems like they're like flying over cities or whatever, and
Yeah, 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 yeah. We flew all the way across the galaxy and now we crashed because we don't know how to fly our craft or right?
yeah. So what podcasts are you into, like true crime podcasts or supernatural,
Oh,
anything like that you listen to?
I I don't know. I lately I've just been listening to a lot of business type podcasts. It's nothing probably of interest to most people. Just so I or music. I've been driving with music a lot. I wish I could plug something that has been hitting me lately, and I got nothing.
Yeah, I feel like the music scene in general has just kind of been pretty pretty dead. I was like really into, like I was saying before, I'm really into indie, and then at some indie rock, and then at some point in like around like 2000, probably 13, 14, 15, it's been really hard to find stuff I'm into. Maybe it's because of my age, but I don't even know really like what's popular now. And if I do know what is popular, I'm like not really all that into it. Like
Yeah,
Taylor
yeah,
Swift or that kind of stuff, I'm
yeah,
just not really that into it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think they have the same issue that we talked about of podcasts, right? I mean, there's just a lot of noise. There's so much on Spotify, right? Like you can discover them occasionally, and sometimes you'll find a little golden nugget here or there, but it's hard. Like you're panning for gold when you're out there looking for new material.
Yeah, now, and especially with I just heard recently there was like a full AI band that was like big. I don't know if you heard about
Yeah,
that, but big
yeah,
on
yeah, yeah,
Spotify.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think at first they were trying to say like we're not AI, but then now they came out and said they are.
Really.
And you can fully tell like the pictures of the band, and you can even tell with the music that it sounds AI, but it's a full album of multiple albums of
Mm,
songs. And yeah, I mean, if you can do that, if you can create AI music, it's easy, you know what I mean? And then sell it, easy money.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think the artists make a ton off Spotify these days. Anyway, I think most of it comes from their doing touring, right?
Yeah.
Merch, maybe.
Yeah. And then what about movies or TV shows? What are you into as far as those?
Oof. Um, oh man, I didn't realize I was gonna get these questions. Uh, Give me a sec to think. Man, there has not been much lately that's been good, unfortunately. Uh, I feel like my wife wrangles me into a lot of reality shows that we watched this Australian um Married at First Sight. Man, we get stuck on that one, but just not that's just there's just not a lot out there. What do you think? Would you got anything going?
I mean, I kind of feel like things are turning around. I don't know if it was like COVID or what, but there was a period there for like 3 or 4 years where there wasn't much of anything. And then right after COVID, there was like the writer's strike, and I feel like it's kind of coming back around. And recently I actually just saw a movie called Together last night. I don't know if you heard of that one. It's with Dave
You
Franco,
you saw it last night, or it's called
or it's
Together
called
last night?
Together, but then we saw it last night.
Last night. Okay, all right, go on.
Yeah. Dave Franco and Allison Brie. I don't know if you know who they are. Dave
Yeah,
Franco is like, yeah, James Franco's brother.
yeah, okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's like a horror movie where they get kind of like body horror where they get like attached to each other, kind of like they can't like they they drink some water that makes them kind of like, you know, not be able to like stay
So,
apart. So it's kind of
oh, I've never
weird.
heard of it. I'll check that
Yeah.
out. Have you? Oh, I thought of something. Have you seen The Studio?
Yeah, I saw the studio. Yeah.
Okay, I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I liked it. I like Seth Rogen in general, but I mean if I had one complaint about it, I thought it went a little too like hammy, a little too cheesy for me. But like
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's like I know that's what they were going for, and but it was like a little bit too over the top, kind of like everything's like super like I mean, don't get me wrong, like I like the directing and everything and like the fact that it was like so fast and everything, but at times it was
Yeah.
like this is too much.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, in general I like that, yeah. And then we just saw Eddington. So we saw together, we saw Eddington, which is I don't know if you know about Eddington, but that's like Ari Aster. I don't know if you know how much you're into like horror movies or whatever, but Ari Aster did like Hereditary and Midsummer. I don't know if you've seen those
Oh,
movies.
fantastic. Midsummer
Yeah.
is one of my favorite for sure.
Yeah. So he did those two movies, kind of got heralded as like the best, you know, new horror movie director, which I think he probably is. But then
Yeah.
he decided to do Beau is Afraid. I don't know if you heard of that one.
I thought that was one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Oh, wow. Really? That's
I do.
interesting.
I do.
Because
I know some people hate it, but go on.
yeah, like I'm a big fan of this of him, and I've been
Mm,
listening to like interviews where he's talking about these movies. And so he
yeah.
decided to do that movie, which was kind of crazy and out there. And then now he just did
Yeah.
Eddington, which is
Yeah.
also kind of it's about like the pandemic. So he's doing a
Okay.
movie about essentially 5 years ago and how like crazy everything got. And a
Oh,
lot of the people aren't as into the new these last two movies, Beau is Afraid and this one,
okay.
because it wasn't his typical
Right.
Hereditary and Midsummer. So yeah,
Yeah.
what did you like about Beau is Afraid? Are you into that kind of like weirder type stuff?
Not usually. I can't remember. I just remember there was so many times I'm just watching that movie like, what? This is crazy. Like this is one of the craziest things I've ever watched. A lot of times it makes no sense. I I can't even say why. I definitely have it in I would say it's in my top 10. I do. I gotta go. I have only watched it once though, so I gotta go back and do it again. And see how I feel about it now. But it just struck me as just absolutely like I think I felt it was very artistic, like visually, just I don't know, just everything about it really just I thought was great.
Yeah, I think that he did a really good job at um I think in general it's well directed. I would imagine that what he did was very hard to do. But in some of the interviews that he's talked about recently, he's kind of said he thinks well, first of all, he thinks that they're really funny, but I it's like not really my so much my type of humor, but then also like he said like he kind of started with the first hour being kind of like really fast and crazy, but then it kind of almost like devolves into like not only madness, but it almost kind of slows down. So it's kind of like messing with the viewer in a sense, like where it's
Hmm.
like you're like kind of into it at first, but then it kind of gets harder and harder to watch as you go along because
Yeah.
it's so
It,
long. And he kind of did that on purpose, which I think was kind of like so I think he's kind of like messing with the viewer a little bit. But obviously some people like that, you know what I mean?
I just remember feeling very uncomfortable
Yeah.
watching it. Very, very disturbed
And that's
the
the
whole
point.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your top 10 then? Or at least a couple of the top 10?
I mean, some of them are the probably obvious ones. You got to put Goodfellas in there. I put Good Will Hunting in there. I'd have to look at a
Yeah.
list. I could pull them out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, we were just watching Happy Gilmore 2 upstairs, and I think that it's got to be one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
Oh
I
yeah.
Have you seen it?
No, I mean, my
It's
fiance
just
watched it and I wasn't expecting good things, which is sad, I mean, because I like the
it's
first one.
the first one. It is like The Godfather in comparison. I mean, it's so bad. It's really unbelievable.
It's kind of weird how he's not able, like for some reason over the past 20 years or whatever, like he's not able to kind of like just redo the first one. I don't know if it's just because of his age or like what, but you know what
I
I
think
mean?
he's not hungry. I think
Yeah.
you got to be hungry. I think to be successful at anything you do, you have to be hungry. And that's why you have people who come from, you know, nothing and they accomplish some really great things. And now I mean, every movie he does now, it's his wife has got to be in there, his kids got to be in there, they got to have a free vacation somewhere, you know. That's all it is. It's almost like the whole thing is a tax write-off that you're watching.
Yeah. It's so sad because well, for one, I just think I just read that he like is like the highest paid actor, which is insane to me. Like whatever this article said was he is the highest paid actor above Robert Downey Jr. and all these other people. And Robert Downey Jr. is another one that I kind of like. I'm pretty pissed that he's doing like only Marvel movies now. It seems besides Oppenheimer, like it's kind of like, dude, like you're such a good actor. Like, do you really have to? I don't know if you're into those like Marvel movies, but you know what I mean. It's like
Yeah.
I feel like you can do a little bit better than that. But where was I going with that? Oh yeah, so it's just sad to me that like somebody who is getting paid so much money and is so loved has just kind of given up like that. And every once in a while, I don't know if you saw Uncut Gems or if you were like in. Did you see Uncut Gems with him?
Yes, fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So every once
Yeah.
in a while, he can do a good movie like that. I mean, that movie
Yeah.
was so. That was another one that was just kind of like bizarre, and even almost like surprise. Like, I liked the movie. I like those types of movies, but it was also kind of like bizarre, like Bo is Afraid. You know what I mean? Where it was like, but
Yeah.
it was good, and you could tell that he
Yeah.
he was a good fit in it. But
Yeah.
it's sad that he's kind of got to the point where he's just cashing in with Happy Gilmore too or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, I gotta go soon because my fiance just got back. But one last
Okay.
question I ask is I have like a nostalgia, I guess, for like Illinois and Chicago and because my family's from there. So how is living there? How do you like living there? How's life and
I think it's great. I mean,
yeah.
lately we've had issues with with the Canadian wildfires blowing their, um, I don't know, their PM 2.5 and all that goes right down. We couldn't even go outside for the last couple of days. So it's been really, really bad, the air quality. Normally it's great though. You know, I'm not a big fan of winters, but the winters here have become so mild. Like you just don't get anything anymore. It used to be that snow would get on the ground, it would barely even melt. Now, I don't even think it barely even snowed last winter here.
Wow,
So
I wonder
it
why that is.
was just warmer. Everything's warmer. Summers are great. Lots to do here, but we had an opportunity to move to San Diego um 20 years ago and we declined because it was 2006. So if you recall, all the housing, the prices were all messed up, right? This was before the crash. And so we go down to San Diego and oh, this is pretty cool. You know, we went to the beach in October and that was nice. And then the crappiest house you could find there was at that time was, 650 grand or something like that. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna get a raise to come here and I'm gonna blow it all on a crappy house. I'm like, whatever. So we turned it down, but now that same house is probably $1 million.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy to think too. During that period, the houses actually went up. But you said it was during the recession, right?
it was '06. It was before the crash had happened.
Oh,
Yeah,
it
when
was right
everything was like,
before. Okay, okay.
yeah, everything was kind of peaked out. I sold my house in California. It was 1,000 square foot in the valley, in Modesto is where it was. So 1,000 square foot, gangbangers down the street. I mean, just not a nice place. We sold it for 330 in '06, and by '08, it was on the market for 85,000 from being foreclosed on.
Wait, sorry. Where you had a house in Modesto?
Hmm. Yeah.
Like, were you living there, or
Yeah.
when was?
Yeah. I was a controller in California for a little bit in Stockton.
Okay, so was this
Yeah.
before you moved, or was this
This is
before?
before Salt Lake, before Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah. Sort
So did
of.
you grow up in
No, I grew up, well, I was born in San Antonio, but I grew up in Chicago.
where were you? Where'd you grow up? San Antonio.
Yeah. San Antonio. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So how do you feel? So you had the place in Modesto, and you said it was how much was it?
We sold it for 330. I think I paid maybe 270. So it wasn't like we didn't really, wasn't a big deal, but we got out of it at 330. And within 2 years, it was selling for 85,000 as a foreclosure.
And that was during the
That was in '08. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I was just so glad that we had escaped. Now that house is probably worth 500. Who knows? I haven't looked it up in a long time.
Yeah. How do you? I mean, would you say that you would like? Would you rather be where you are now, or do you feel like you'd rather be in San Diego? Like, I mean, do you think that San Diego is just like way better, or Illinois is
I,
way better?
I, I think it's tough, you know. I mean, in the middle of winter, sure, I'm like, oh, I'd love to live in San Diego. It's, you gotta have good property, right? So I mean, I'd take living within a few blocks of the beach in San Diego over anything, you know? I mean, that's just can't beat that. Being in
Yeah.
the '70s and '80s your entire year. But now, I mean, we got it pretty good here. We like it.
Yeah.
So unless someone's giving me a beach house over there in San Diego, we're not leaving.
Yeah. Which is hard to get. And most of the people who live even near the beach, not like on the beach, but like near the beach, I used to live miles away. And I would actually go to the beach a lot. But so there's so many people who don't go to the beach. And they're right, they live there, but they don't go to the beach. It's like they don't even like
Mm.
the beach. So it's like, what's the point? Besides,
Yeah,
obviously, the weather is nice. But
yeah,
yeah, like my
yeah.
family, my mom and my dad moved from Chicago or Naperville area to here, and they did good here. Like we lived in Orange County for a bit, but I think they always kind of regretted moving away from their family. And at one point, their family, or like her, my aunt, her sister, and her family moved to actually San Diego, like San Marcos, I think. For like a year they were here. So it was kind of like we had some family here, but then they moved back. So I think it was one of those things where from my dad's perspective, my mom and my dad's perspective, I think they always kind of wanted to go back, but then they had kids here. And so we didn't want to go
Hmm.
back. So it was kind of like they were
Yeah,
stuck here.
yeah,
And I think that there's more of like, well, at least for them, I guess, there's more of that family element out there. And it was just more of, to me, when I would go out there, it just was like more, I don't know. The best way that I would say it was just, I don't really want to say that it was slower out there, but it was just kind of like more mellow out there. And obviously, I
yeah,
didn't really know anybody. I wasn't really doing much of anything, but out here, everything seems kind of like really, especially the closer you get to LA, so fast paced. But out there, it seemed really kind of just comfortable, kind of, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, it was good having you on, Shane. Yeah, send me those links, and then I'll send you everything when it goes up.
Excellent. Yeah, Micah, it was great. It was nice meeting you. Your podcast is great, and I'm glad to have been a guest. I'm honored.
Thank you. All right, bye guys.
All right.